Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Marlene Asalto. I'm with the Southern New Jersey Development Council. We're so glad that you're with us this morning. We do have a lot to do, so we're going to indulge you, please, and ask that we have breakfast while we have our meeting. I think that'll be all right this morning. But to start with, I'd like you to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And while I still have your attention, let me just say a very big thank you to our host, Mike Giantonio from Resorts, his staff, starting with Vicki and Eva, and the AV guys, and the wait staff, and the security office. Mike, they were wonderful. So I'd like to hear a few words from Mike Giantonio, the president of Resorts.
Not far from.
Thank you, Marlene. You know, I've been called worse. I just want to let you know that. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Resorts. It's a pleasure to see you all here. And Marlene, I have to hand it to you. Every single year, it seems like this event gets stronger and bigger and bigger. We are really proud to host this event. I want to thank Eva Campbell and the Food and Beverage and Culinary team that does such a great job. So thank you, Eva. Just a couple of comments. You know, this year in May, we celebrated our 45th anniversary. So as you probably are aware, we were the first casino to open outside of Nevada 45 years ago. I remember it well as an Atlantic City resident back then. And it's just quite amazing to be here still at this property. I started to work here back in 1982, and then, of course, worked in other properties. But to be here under the renaissance of what is Atlantic City, and certainly this property. But I want to just share with you just some important information that you may not be aware of. And these are just pure facts. As is the whole American economy, has been struggling a bit. It's no secret that Atlantic City has been struggling a bit. The casino industry, when you look at the earnings collectively over the trailing 12 months, second quarter trailing 12 months, our earnings are down about $165 million, or about 20%. And I have to say that I can't go back. I have to go back a few decades to see that type of performance. And this is coupled at a time when the casinos are better capitalized than they've been in years, in decades. More than $1 billion have been reinvested in the casinos to make the properties here, attractive to consumers throughout the nation. And so we are certainly in a bit of a struggle. And it's no secret, the industry in Atlantic City has peaks and valleys, and we hope that we're at a trough and we're going to come out of it. But I do want to share this with you, certainly as in my role as the head of the Casino Association. I think it's really important that we, the industry, forge stronger bonds with our legislative partners than we have ever had before. I think that's really, really important. And I say that with all sincerity. I think we have to work collectively together to really build a plan, a framework for building business in the future that will not only just help casinos, but it will help everybody, residents, small business, and all the Southern New Jersey folks here. So, you have that pledge from the industry that we're really going to work to build this relationship that's been, I think maybe not as strong in years past, but I think going forward, if we work collectively together, we can make what this, if you just look out the windows here, we have all of the natural resources, we have all of the beautiful beach and boardwalk and so forth. We can make this a destination that is second to none in America. So anyway, I wish you a great meeting, and thank you, Marlene.
Okay, thanks. Well, just as a reminder, for some folks who are standing, there are a lot of seats, so make yourself comfortable. And here's something new for you. Today, we will inform you, entertain you. We have a special guest for you, and we have a poolside party for you. So I think you're going to have a great day, and there's lots to do. So I'll get on with it while you're having breakfast, and I thank you for being so polite during Mark's remarks. So help me out also, because I have a long list of very wonderful people to point out to you, and it's just a wave. We don't need applause. Our assemblymen this morning joining us, Assemblyman Bill Spearman, Don Guardian, Brandon Umba. Thank you, guys. Assemblywoman Carol Murphy. You'll see them first up this morning. Commissioner from the New Jersey Casino Control Commission, Elisa Cooper. From New Jersey Casino Commission, again, is Joyce Molyneux. The Atlantic County Commissioner, Karen Fitzpatrick. The Camden County Commissioner Director, Lou Capelli. We've got some mayors in the room. From Buena Borough, Mayor Dave Zapparillo. Gloucester County Township, David Mayer. Willingboro Township, Mayor Kaya McIntosh. Deptford Township Councilman Ken Barnshaw. We have from the U.S. government representing Congressman Norcross, Mary Cruz, and from the Department of Agriculture, the State Director for Rural Development, Jane DeSelta, is here. So thank you for being here. I also have some very sweet partners that I work with throughout the years and have worked with them throughout many years. And I do want you to give a wave so I see where you're sitting. From the African American Chamber of Commerce, Philanda Fox Nixon. Where are you? Oh, good. Burlington County Regional Chamber of Commerce, President Christy Howe. Cape May County Chamber, President Barbara Jones. Gloucester County Chamber of Commerce, Janet Garrity. New Jersey Chamber of Commerce President Thomas Bracken. A real treat. Tom, where are you? And my good friend Mike Eggington, who is the Executive Vice President for Governmental Affairs. Thank you, Mike, for being with us. Also, acknowledgments to Mike Snyder from Visit South Jersey, who has presented this video for you this morning. And also joining us is Dr. Gaba from Atlantic Cape Community College. Dr. Gaba, thank you for being here. And from Stockton, President Joe Bertolino, thank you for being with us. So now, on to the program, and I have the privilege of presenting the chair of this event, Lisa Marino, who is with the Cooper Hospital Foundation. Lisa will come to the microphone and take it from here.
All right, thank you, Marlene. Good morning, everyone. If you don't know me, Marlene mentioned I'm Lisa Marina. Serve as the vice chairman of the Sound Off event, and that allows me to welcome you all here this morning. I also, my day job, I'm the VP for advancement for the Cooper Foundation, So it's great to see everyone here today. I've been on the Development Council board for a very long time. I think, I don't know, maybe almost 20 years. I don't want to age myself, but you know, just judging by the people in the room today, I think that the committee has done a really good job, and I want to thank them for that. Before I get started, I did see, and I don't think Marlene did, that Senator Palestino's here. Welcome, Senator Palestino. Thanks for being here this morning. So Marlene said we're going to inform, entertain, and surprise. I would like to be the entertainment, but I think I got the informational piece of the puzzle. So I have the job of acknowledging a lot of sponsors. So while you're eating, just give me your ear and bear with me, because there's a lot of people that we need to thank, and I'm going to run through that list today. We're really honored to have so many companies make a commitment here this morning. I think it has to do with the panels that we have. We really appreciate the legislators who are here, and certainly we appreciate Governor Murphy's coming in. So networking is a big reason that you're here. We hope that you will make sure that you take advantage of that later on at the pool, as Marlene mentioned. But what I want to do now is acknowledge a lot of our sponsors. Please hold your applause. There's a lot of people, and I'm going to run through it relatively quickly. For our supporting sponsors, Advocacy and Management Group, Marshall Spivak, AT&T, Jacqueline Cater, Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind, Doug Copeland, Atlantic City Electric, Mike Wallace, Comcast, Fred DeAndrea, PSE&G Nuclear, Jim Gilroy, Rowan University, Dr. Joe Cardona, South Jersey Gas, Sam Kaplan, and Stockton University, Dr. Joe Bertolino. Thank you as our supporting sponsors. Our lanyard sponsor, ELEC 825, Kate Gibbs, and our closing sponsors, and we really do hope that you'll come out to the reception. We want to thank the following sponsors: Carpenters Local 255, John Robinson; GEI Consultants, Chris Daly; Infinity Energy, Nick Hornack; Legacy Treatment Services, Nick DeRose; NJ Capital, Community Capital, Vanessa Cayano; Northeast Precast, Mark Gorgas; Paulsboro Refining, Rachel Mueller; PCS, Anthony Mangazzulo; Rowan College of South Jersey, Nick Bercichelli; and South Jersey Port Corporation, Andy Saporino. Please give them a warm round of applause. All right, and now this beautiful list of our corporate sponsors. We thank them all for their participation today, and I'll run through them quickly. Atlantic Cape Community College, BD Engineering, First National Bank of Elmer, Fox Rothschild, French and Perillo Associates, Greenman Peterson Inc., Greyhawk, GZA Geoenvironmental, Hutchinson Mechanical Services, Inspira Health Network, Maryville Addiction Treatment Center, New Jersey American Water, Orsted, PCH Technologies, Performance Marketing, PSE&G, South State, Stanker and Galetto, Stokes Creative Group, STV Incorporated, Thomas Boyd Communications, Triad Associates, Visit South Jersey, and Volunteers of America, Delaware Valley. And finally, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the Sound Off Planning Committee, who helped put together another great program. And I just want to also acknowledge the staff of the Southern New Jersey Development Council, because they really do the lift for this event, and I would like to just thank them for the time that they put into this as well. But our committee members were Marshall Spivak from Advocacy and Management Group, Gina Sullivan from ELAC 825, Ed Sarin, Obermeyer, Karen Elkis, Optimus Partners, Glenn DeVilla, Performance Marketing, Jim Gilroy, PSE&G Nuclear, Will Gruccio, Renati Solutions, Dr. Joe Cardona, Rowan University, and Michael Suleiman from South Jersey Transportation. Please join me in thanking them for this event. Now, I'm done reading everyone's name. Thank you. If I didn't say your name, come see me later. I'll thank you for being here individually, because I pretty much said everyone's name in the room. But at this point, I'd like to start the panel discussions. So if I can have our first panel, and Bridget come up to the stage to get ready. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Bridget Harrison. Dr. Harrison is a department chair and professor of political science and law at Montclair State University. She's the author of American Democracy Now!, one of the leading introductory political science textbooks of the United States. She's the author of A More Perfect Union, Power in Society, and Women in American Politics. We are thrilled to have her joining us today. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Bridget Harrison.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. So I have the privilege of facilitating the entertainment for today. I'm going to call to the stage our esteemed panel of legislators. Can you please join me in welcoming Assemblyman Don Guardian from the 2nd Legislative District, Assemblyman William Spearman from the 5th Legislative District, Assemblywoman Carol Murphy from the 7th Legislative District, and Assemblyman Brandon Umba from the 8th Legislative District. So my role really is just to facilitate entertainment, but also to make sure that some of the topics that are of concern to the various constituencies in the room are covered. They're still getting seated. You just saw each other at the table. Please have a seat. I know. That's great. So I wanted to start off just giving the members the opportunity to talk a little bit about their pet projects, what they're seeing in their district, the things that are important to them. So Assemblyman Umba, why don't we start with you? My understanding is that you are about to sponsor, along with the members of your legislative delegation, a bill that deals with allowing certain families of deceased officers to collect death benefits. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So tragically, over the summer when we were in recess, one of the communities that I serve, Mansfield Township, they had a young officer just join the force, went through the police academy, was, I believe, 2 weeks into his time as a police officer, and he tragically died of a heart condition. There's a little nuance within the pension rules that any new enrollee, you have to wait a month before you can submit paperwork. So since he was not enrolled, his family essentially is being left out and not benefiting from a death benefit for a career that he chose to be in law enforcement, to protect his community. And really, the need here, it's always tragic when you lose a loved one. But he has a fiance, she's pregnant with his first child, and this is just something that I feel that us as a legislature, we can't leave our first responders behind. He chose to join that profession and unfortunately died of a heart condition that he did not know he had. And so my hope is that when we return to Trenton in November, that we'll be able to move that bill as quickly as possible so that his family can benefit from that and they can start to recover somewhat from that tragic loss.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Assemblyman Spearman, you've been at the leadership in terms of working on efforts for workforce development and modernizing the transmission grid. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those efforts that you've undertaken?
Sure. Well, okay, I have two bills that we're working on. One is the New Jersey Works Bill. The New Jersey Works Bill was created in partnership with Camden County College, the commissioners of Camden, and our business partners. And it focuses on preparing those who aren't quite work ready to re-enter the workforce. And we created it to fill the void that we have in qualified workers. We have a lot of people who have ability, but they're just not quite ready to enter the workforce. So this bill would allow the private sector to work with the education sector to train people so that they can take jobs. I'll give you an example. Let's say Comcast needs 100 engineers. They would approach Camden County College. Camden County College would tell them how much it would cost per person to train those 100 engineers. Comcast would then get approval. Let's say it's $1,000. Comcast would then get approval from the Department of Labor. They give Camden County College $100,000. They train the 100 engineers. And upon finishing the course, Comcast would hire the 100 engineers. and that then they would get a tax credit for the cost of the training. So that's the New Jersey Works bill, that's S583. And the other bill I'm working on, which is something that what came at the behest of the business community to address the high cost of electric power right now. The problem we have in New Jersey, and working with my friends like Mike Wallace, we have a problem with our electrical grid. This grid was created in the 1930s. And today, as we move to an all-electric society, we need to upgrade our grid so that we can satisfy the power needs, not only for our electric vehicles, but as we go to all-electric utilities in our houses. And this bill would create a task force made up of representatives from the business community, from the engineering community, from different sectors of government, and be in the governor's office to come up with a master plan to look at what we need to do to improve our grid throughout the state. And most importantly, we would look at how to fund that, because right now, the cost of improving the electrical grid is falling on the business community, and that's just not fair. We in the public sector need to focus on providing funding to improve our grid so that our business community can benefit and we can lower costs. And that's what this task force would do.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I want to circle back later in our conversation with the workforce development aspect. But Assemblyman Guardian, can you talk a little bit, since your time when you were mayor of this fair city, tourism was obviously an important aspect of your agenda. Now in the Assembly, it remains so, and as well as transportation, which is kind of a passion project of mine. Can you tell us a little bit about your efforts in the Assembly on those issues?
Of course. First of all, welcome everyone to my hometown of Atlantic City. Thank you for choosing to be here. As the summer season ends, we rely on conferences and conventions for all of our people to pay their bills and stuff, so thank you for being here. Tourism continues to be very important, certainly the entire Jersey Shore, but as you've seen in the last quarter, both the Senate and the Assembly and the Governor have now defined, whether you agreed or not, who is in South Jersey, who is in Central Jersey, and who is in North Jersey. And
What is this thing called Central Jersey? I've never heard of that.
If you're from Central Jersey, you'd be very offended. The part of that is that we can look at the three areas in terms of tourism, determine what do they offer, and then make sure that we're providing the funding and the promotion of each of those areas. We also passed a bill realizing that there are funds that are dedicated for tourism on a state level that are not used. And so this money is now going to be sent back to the counties based on the percentage that they put into the bill to begin with, the funds there. We just think that the county will indeed use that funds to promote tourism. I think as you talk about transportation, it becomes real important for the casinos in particular. So we have a great airport here, we just can't find anyone to fly here. And I think the issue is that we have been trained in New Jersey to be happy to drive to Philadelphia or Newark, and so why would one of these airlines ever want to come here? I think the answer is that we should move the airport from the South Jersey Transportation Authority into the Port Authority. They're running Newark, they're running LaGuardia, they're running Kennedy, and they control the gates. And so without gates, you can't fly in there. They can have a lot more authority and persuasion to get a couple more airlines into Atlantic City by promising gates in the other three major metropolitan airports. With transportation easy to get out beyond just going to Florida for our snowbirds, I think that certainly will help the area as well. And I think we have to realize the importance of casinos. They've been very good for 45 years. This year alone, they employed 1,000 more people than they did last year. But they are struggling, a lot more competition out there, a lot more people using internet and sports gaming. They're getting a part of that. But I think we have to relook in the next 2 years. I know the governor has it on his plate that we've got to look at as the pilot that they're paying now comes up for a reintroduction. So we've got to look at the taxes that are paid to the CRDA, the taxes that are paid on vehicles that are parking here, the luxury tax, where that funding is going and how we can use it to improve Atlantic City and South Jersey in general.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Really interesting proposals. Assemblywoman Murphy, your efforts, some of your efforts in the Assembly have been focusing on broadband telecommunication infrastructure. Obviously, we know that this was particularly important. We saw the need for this during the COVID pandemic, but obviously it's not going away. Can you talk a little bit about your efforts in that area?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And I would be remiss if I did not make a comment about my colleagues up here that we, even though we are same party, two of us, and two of us are from the opposite party, we all work well together. And I think that's what our policy that we are making now is absolutely going to be successful by us having the communications. We may not agree, but we do have the communications, and I want to thank my colleagues for that. But, you know, what we saw, especially, I started this endeavor actually when I first got elected with the 5G. And COVID hit, and we saw the impact of our lack of infrastructure on everything, from broad-based to wireless to FiOS to everything you can imagine from cable. What I see sitting on national committees is the fact that mostly every state has some type of 5G that has been effectuated. My bill that I had put in a while ago, and we're hoping to get it through, we got it through the Assembly, we just haven't been able to get it through the Senate, that would establish regulations for 5G. It would undoubtedly help not only our schools, our colleges for remote learning, but also our businesses. With more and more that people are staying home now, working from home, or they have online ordering, they need a fast internet that will, a fast speed, wireless, to be able to do it from anywhere, because people take their phones everywhere. They're equipped with phones, with iPads, with laptops, with everything, and they're working constantly, whether they're on a train going to work, or they are sitting in a car being driven to work, or they're on the weekends. So the effort here, and this hasn't gone undone, I work with AT&T and a coalition. Believe it or not, we got all of everybody, all of the wireless and broadband, and I don't know how we did it. I give a lot of credit to my coalition coming together on this bill to make sure that the processes and procedures are streamlined. It would also allow the municipalities, keep this in mind, it will allow the municipalities to benefit from the permitting process through fees. So it's a win-win situation. It allows residents to have access, especially for our school kids. It will also allow businesses to have access to a faster way of doing business, whether you do online or just record keeping, bookkeeping. And ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't realize this, but by the end of the year, 3G is going to be gone. The platform for 3G is going to be gone. So if we don't have anything that has 5G, we're stuck with 4G. And I could tell you when I go to different states, through the different conventions I go to, just knowing that 5G automatically comes up on my phone, I feel a lot comfortable knowing I'm going to not miss a phone call, especially from my staff who have to call me. So, you know, it is important. And as we go forward, I think our infrastructure in totality, not just in our communication infrastructure, but our transportation infrastructure is another big issue that I've been dealing with. So these are plenty of reasons to start looking at a faster, more, I guess, a more expectant, a more reliable communication. And if we're going to be a 21st century city, state, and nation, we have to start getting into the 21st century.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I want to turn our attention now to the economy. And as you all know, our economy in New Jersey is dependent on the efficient movement of both goods and people. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will provide New Jersey with more than $12 billion with a B dollars to invest in roadways, bridges, electrical vehicle infrastructure, and railways. Of concern for many of us in the room, however, is that South Jersey gets its fair share. Recently, the FHWA approved a $425 million additional federal funding for NJDOT and New Jersey Transit projects, and all but one of these projects and all but a fraction of the funding will go to North Jersey, the one exception being improvements along the Atlantic City Expressway in Gloucester County. And I would pose to you, how do we in South Jersey ensure that we are getting our fair share?
I'll start, sure. Only because I sit on the budget committee, and I can tell you my colleagues are tired of hearing me say South Jersey, South Jersey, South Jersey. I'm waiting for someone to say, please shut her up and just give her whatever she wants, but they won't do that. Look, South Jersey is a big priority, I think, of all of us sitting up here and all of us in this room. We've noticed that South Jersey does not get their fair share, despite the fact that people in North Jersey and now Central Jersey all think we get everything. And I remember growing up in the days, and it was talked about when the first casinos came here. When we were younger, I'm probably older, I'm older than you, Brian, so you're going to get an education here, my friend. South Jersey was going to do what Carolinas did. They were talking about splitting North Jersey and South Jersey. And then what happens? We build casinos. And all of a sudden it became, oh my God, no, we can't, because North Jersey isn't going to get their share. Well, we forgot one thing. South Jersey is not getting its share. And I think as we move forward, and I will say this, South Jersey Transportation Authority, that is one of the biggest priorities that I've been working with on many avenues. And transportation out of there is going to do a great, it's actually going to be a resolvent for bringing more traffic into Atlantic City. And I know they've been working on it. And that's the key, right? Whether or not we have Atlantic City or tourism or our businesses within our development, it is extremely hard. And it's making sure that folks like that, I'm sitting up here with my colleagues, we all understand the importance of what South Jersey brings, not only in the educational field, but also in our trade field, our workforce. Identifying those places that we can bring more businesses. Down in southern part of the state, we can bring in more businesses. We could bring in manufacturers. We could bring in television. We could bring in all of that necessities that we need down here. It's getting the right mentality that we have in the legislature to stop making this about north, south, and central. Let's start making this about the state of New Jersey, and everybody who lives here is able to live for affordability regardless of what zip code they have. And I think that is so much important. And I am going to just put a little plug in, if you don't mind, Bridget, for my trade bill with Ireland, establishing the commission, which Brendan sits with me on the caucus. And that not only has the ability for us to bring in business from Ireland, but also an educational component, which I've talked to all of my, and if I haven't got to you, I will. All of the presidents from the universities here in South Jersey, talk to them about the educational component and meeting with my friends in Ireland that is going to talk about how we can bring more businesses, not only from Ireland, but to Ireland, and establishing, especially in the tech world. That is extremely important. And actually, Monday, I will be meeting with the Minister of Defense and Foreign Affairs on Monday in New York about this. And I think this is important to keep in mind that as we as the legislature move forward, especially on the budget front, this is what is important to remember. On the budget front, we care about our businesses. We want to make sure that everyone is able to work here, play here, stay here, but spend their money here, not work across the bridge and come back, or work here and spend their money across the bridge. We don't want that. We want everybody to stay here. So it's all about the budgeting, and it's making sure that each and every one of you, voices are heard by us as legislators of what the concerns are.
Thank you.
If I
John,
could add,
yeah.
Carol said it earlier. The key in making sure that you're able to make sure your priorities here in South Jersey are met is by keeping open lines of communication. So yes, the Senate President no longer resides in South Jersey anymore. It's an issue when we're trying to raise issues for South Jersey. But the thing that has come out of that is a coalition, bipartisan coalition, where people on both sides of the aisle are talking and saying, listen, we need to make sure that South Jersey is a priority, and we need to make sure that we're putting the spotlight on South Jersey. The key thing here is that when we send $1 to DC, 75 cents comes back. What is the main driver? So we talked about transportation issues, but the main driver of federal dollars that are coming back to New Jersey is because of the base. Most federal dollars go to states that have multiple bases. We are lucky enough here in South Jersey to have Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst. I know we announced earlier that the Burlington County Chamber president is here. She's made it her mission to make sure that we get the business community connected to the base community so that we can grow the economy. That economy is so important for us from a business perspective, from an international security perspective. We were at, I know Senator Paulstina and I were at the 177th right here over on the mainland for 9/11. These were the first planes in the air to protect our citizens after the attacks of 9/11. So the importance of advocating for our federal institutions and our National Guard institutions and partnering with our members of Congress to make sure that we continue to make sure that the missions stay there, because that's the driver of the economy here. We are going to see more businesses, more industry people coming in. And then, lastly, as Carol said, partnering internationally. Okay, let's not rely on the federal government to bring our partnerships in. Let's send our legislators, let's send our governor to go out to these communities and bring back what they're doing. Ireland has 0 unemployment. They have more jobs than the people that they have to give them. And that is something that we need to tap into. And we need to make sure that we are always looking at other opportunities to bring in business and bring in investment into New Jersey. So, the good thing that you're seeing here in South Jersey is it's a bipartisan coalition. South Jersey first. What can we do to grow our economy here so that we are not forgotten in Trenton? And I will say it's because of that partnership that we are not being forgotten.
Don, I just wanted to ask you, so we've seen a lot of attention in the state paid to congestion pricing, which affects primarily the folks in North Jersey. When the federal money landed, of course, there was talk about the tunnels. One thing, you'll recall the days when there was direct rail service between Atlantic City and Newark Penn, and therefore Jersey City and Penn Station. And in my mind, with a millennial culture that has kind of shunned cars somewhat, and our lower property values, to me it's kind of a no-brainer that we, as a state, start thinking about reconnecting South Jersey by rail, which would benefit not only places like resorts, but also education institutions like Stockton, and the broader regional economy, also increasing property values if you can commute into Newark or New York in a relatively easy manner. Is that something that the Assembly is even thinking about, looking at, or tell us your view on that?
Certainly. So I think connecting North and South Jersey by fast-speed trains is where we need to be going. I don't think anyone disagrees. We stop in Bayhead right now,
Right.
and then we sold all of those.
66 miles of track, yep.
I think we got to look at the bigger picture. How are we funding it? And so I'd like to touch just a minute on, there's only 4 presidents in our history that addressed the problems of what the funding we need to do all of these projects. Washington, I think it was John Quincy Adams, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. Last one to thought about that. They set up a bank, a federal bank that was specifically for infrastructure projects. And they didn't ask for extra money. They didn't print more money. They didn't go to taxes. All they did was buy the bonds that were already there. Gave them 2% more than use that money. There is a bill now in front of Congress. It would be for $5 trillion. That's not an unreasonable amount for the roadways, for the bridges, for the tunnels, for making sure that we get rid of the lead in the water, for making sure that the whole country has enough water. We're talking about affordable housing for our next generation. So I think we've got to get behind that bill. I've been on at least 50 Zoom conferences with everybody in the country trying to talk them into this. It is before Congress now. That's the type of funding we need so we can do the infrastructure projects. Trains is something that our generations wouldn't think about because they're not the quality that we have, for instance, in Europe or in Japan. We've traveled there. That's what we need to be doing right now. That's the long-term thinking, and South Jersey has been left out of that link. I'd say, too, as you're talking about South Jersey, you've got to remember both the east and west side. So we've got to connect Trenton and Camden. We've got to connect that to North Jersey, so it's not just Philly and New York.
Bill, did you want to add anything? Assemblyman Spearman?
Well, we already have the light rail that runs from Trenton to Camden, and my understanding is it's funded to be extended to Glassboro. So that's one thing we can do, but we need to continue to expand that. I agree. I think everyone up here agrees. We need to make sure we have good rail. We have a rail line from Camden, Philadelphia, all the way to Atlantic City. The problem we have with that rail line is it's sharing the tracks with commercial rail. So it's not as reliable as, say, the speed line that's run by the Delaware River Port Authority. So some of the things we can do, as I said, we're already expanding the light rail. We could perhaps have dedicated tracks for the rail going from Philadelphia to Atlantic City. And we could continue the rail that you mentioned earlier, which stops, I guess, in Central Jersey. We can continue that down to Cape May the way it used to be. And one other thing we could do, I think I feel it's a no-brainer, is extending 55 so that we can go all the way to Cape May without getting off on, what is it, Route 40?
49.
49, yes. I mean, those are things we could do to help facilitate more transport, to make it easier to get around in South Jersey. And you're right. We need to work together to make sure we bring the funds to South Jersey to make those things happen.
Thank you.
One of the big things here, as a local business administrator, when we're trying to compete for federal dollars, federal HUD dollars to build an affordable housing complex, the number one criteria that the federal government looks at is transportation. And they're not looking at transportation in the means of that you have a car to get to your day job. They're looking at mass transit. They want to see that. That is a criteria, and I think it's, the last I checked, I think it was close to 25% of the scoring. And when you think of that, why do you think all those federal HUD dollars are going to North Jersey? It's because they have that access to mass transit. And, you know, luckily when I was in Lumberton, we were able to get federal credits, but it was only because we had to spend months trying to get the Department of Transportation just to have a bus stop. And that criteria was one bus stop. And we only scored, I think, half the points that we were allowed to score because it was one bus stop coming twice a day. So by expanding these items, we'll be able to open ourselves up to more avenues to get federal funding because, you know, listen, we're able to provide. Some communities can, some communities can't because they run out of sewer infrastructure or things like that. But we need to make ourselves more competitive so we can get those federal dollars in to benefit our residents.
Great point. So I turn our attention now to the opioid crisis in healthcare. Governor Murphy signed an executive order directing the State Department of Human Services to lead and monitor the distribution of more than $1 billion coming to New Jersey. This is part of a nationwide payout to settle claims, the companies that help fuel the opioid crisis. Half of the monies will go to the state, the other half will be divided up between local governments. The governor has also signed legislation to codify the Opioid Recovery and Remediation Advisory Council into law. In your view, and I'm going to ask you to hit on these points relatively quickly, is it enough to ensure that the appropriate resources are allocated to the best locations to provide treatment to those in need? And if not, what more should be done?
I know in Camden County, our commissioner director is leading the charge on addressing this issue. We have a very robust program to help, all-encompassing program to help people to get off of to recover, stop being addicted, and then to recover and get their lives back together and become productive members of society again. And I think when we look at this problem, I think that's the solution. I think we have to look at a comprehensive approach, not only to help the victims, and I consider people who are addicted to drugs to be victims, to help them kick the habit, to stop being addicted, but to also help them to rebuild their lives and re-enter society and become productive members of society. So anyone who's interested, I advise them to reach out to Camden County to get more information on their program because they have a very comprehensive program.
And I think the key is using these funds not only to help wean people off an addiction, but also looking at the mental health aspect of it, and making sure that we're hitting the root cause of why is this occurring. You know, just handing somebody Narcan and saying, here you go, here's a free Narcan. Okay, they overdose, they take the Narcan, then you give them another Narcan. That's not solving the problem. You have to look at the root issue. And we should really be making sure that we're taking those funds and using them properly and addressing the mental health aspect that is facing this community that, you know, they need help. And we need to be able to offer that help to them. And I think that's partly what those funds should be used for.
Absolutely. Education.
Mm-hmm.
Education is a big proponent of
Yep.
this. And I was just meeting with somebody yesterday, or the day before yesterday, excuse me, and we were talking about this very subject. They went to the emergency room just recently, and what you would call weekend warriors were there, and they said, what is weekend warriors? And it's because people who party from Friday to Sunday, overdose, go to the hospital, and get taken care of. I don't necessarily, while Narcan is a help and a resource, I don't think that needs to be the resolution. We cannot just keep handing out Narcan because somebody OD'd. They're just going to keep doing it over and over again. And it's education on what do we need to do, not only through treatment, but also mental health and education component of what you need to do when you're ready to get off of it. And, you know, one thing I did fight for was the fact that we are not going to tax opioid pills every time you take one, because there are people. My mother-in-law, for instance, has severe back pain. She has to take opioids for the back pain, but she does it in moderation. That is what this is about. This is about allowing those folks who need it, because there is no other treatment for whatever illness or injury they have, and figuring out a way of educating those who take it just what you would say a weekend warrior, for lack of a better way to say this. And it's education is a huge proponent along with the mental health aspect.
If I could join in more from my experience as an urban mayor, I think we have to look at the whole area. So one is we got to keep them alive. Narcan should be in every police car, every fire truck, every lifeguard station there. So the people that are addicted, that die, we can bring them back. That's only the first step. The second step is I think we're doing that with our drug courts. So when you come, you commit a crime, a judge can give you the option of not going to county, but rather going into a program. The third part of that is people are using drugs just to feel good, to be happy again. It addresses what my colleagues have spoken about. It's a mental health issue. So we have to find out what the reason is. What happened in their life, whether it was something that happened in Afghanistan or some abuse as a child, and we can bring these people back into society. But it is our obligation. This is a crisis across our country, certainly in South Jersey, and now with mental health courts, I think we're bringing in the judicial system that wants to be part of the solution, and the solution is not throwing people in jail, it's getting them back to live a healthy, normal life.
Thank you. So I know President Joe Bartolino is in the room, and obviously we've all seen the expansion of Stockton University. In talking with many corporate leaders in the room, one of the things that has really struck a chord is the need for, as Assemblyman Spearman was mentioning earlier, having folks trained in specific jobs that perhaps students who are attending 2 or 4 year school may not be actually training in. Can you talk a little bit both about state dollars going to higher education and the equity issues there, but also how the state can work as a force to encourage partnership between the education infrastructure and corporations so that our workforce development reflects the needs of the business community in our state? Assemblyman Spearman, why don't we start with you since you were the one who mentioned it?
Sure. Well, the good news is that's already happening. NJBIA is already partnering with the community colleges to design programs that are more in line with what the businesses need, so that rather than kids just going to school and getting a degree and then trying to figure out where they're going to work, the businesses, and I speak specifically about NJBIA and the county colleges, are actually telling the community colleges, we need workers to have this set of skills. And the community colleges are actually designing programs that provide their students with those skills so that the business community can reach out and take these students in upon graduation from either a certificate program or from a 2-year program and move right into careers. And I think our 4-year schools are already starting to look at that. I know Rutgers, I've seen my good friend from Rutgers here today, and I know they're doing it. I believe Stockton's doing it. I believe Rowan's doing it. And I think that is good for both the educational community and for the business community. Because right now we've seen, I used to sit on the board of Camden County College, but we've seen a decline in enrollment across the board for our college, for our educational institutions, which is sad because we need those educational institutions to be healthy so that we can continue to train the next generation of students and train people who are going to re-enter the workforce with new skills so that they can improve their earning power. So I think partnership is the way to go. And I think businesses telling the members of the educational community what they need, and then the educational community designing programs for businesses is the way we need to proceed.
And I think it's a holistic perspective. Sitting on the Education Committee and the Higher Education Committee, it's not a let's root every child into college. There are so many aspects, apprenticeship programs, bringing in dollars and making sure that those dollars are spent to see what are their skill sets so they can be productive members of society. We are seeing hundreds of millions of dollars coming in from the federal government to improve our infrastructure, our broadband infrastructure, as my colleague has said earlier. But we should be taking some of that money and doing workforce development. If we don't have the trained personnel to put up the broadband, to put up the electrical grid, to put up these infrastructure items, then we're not going to get anywhere because we don't have the workforce to do it. And then going back to a budget issue. So this is, and I'll give a shout out to Stockton. Stockton came to me immediately after the budget was announced. And we said, the government gave them a commitment, 25-year commitment, saying, we want you to go to Atlantic City. And we're going to commit to you $2.3 million every year of federal or of state dollars to go towards your debt service. And immediately in that budget, it was cut from the proposed budget. So they met with us. I said, listen, you got to go meet with my friend Carol Murphy. I said, she's going to be able, as a member of the budget committee, to push this forward. But we have to start looking at the state budget and saying, okay, there's an actuarial cost of that we make commitments, and we should not be rejecting those commitments. You move there. You partner with SJI to have offices there. You're educating our future of New Jersey. We made you a commitment. In year 6, we're not going to cut that commitment. So when we do the budget process, it should be, here's 60%, 50%. This is costs that are already baked into the budget and are non-negotiable. Fully funding the pension system, making sure that the healthcare costs are covered for our state employees, and making sure our debt service costs are covered that we've committed to. And then, all right, that 40% over here that's discretionary, yeah, we can argue about that for a couple months. But we have to look at this in a perspective of saying, okay, legislators like Carol and I should not have to argue to make sure that a commitment that was given to them 6 years ago gets back into the budget. We shouldn't have to be jockeying for that. It should already be there, so that we can focus on other items that are a benefit to our communities. But I think at this point, what we're seeing in our K through 12 grades is opening up and making sure that they know college could be a pathway, the workforce could be a pathway, or skilled labor is a very good pathway for you to go to, and you will earn a very, very good living. I came out of college with $100,000 in debt, and my first job gave me $35,000 in a salary. My cousin, who became a trained electrician, went into school, came out with no debt, and then became a trained electrician at $65,000 of salary in his first year. These are good paying jobs. These are jobs that we need to grow into the future. And I think that's our mentality that we have to do with the Department of Education, is that college might not be the only answer. And we need to be able to steer those students to what their passion is. And if their passion is skilled trade, we need to encourage that on that level.
And if you don't mind, I'm just going to comment one thing for you, because you brought up about Stockton and partnership. I don't think clarified. I toured Stockton a few times, just recently in the last few months, and meeting with them and the new part of what they've just built and what they want to do. One of the things that impressed me about Stockton is the students that go there, as in all colleges, have jobs around the college. But Stockton actually partners with the local businesses in Atlantic City to assure that the students who want to work and need to work are able to do that. And I'm very impressed with that, especially, and I'm going to give kudos to our casinos as well, because they are the top performing employer with Stockton in order to help see our children advance. Because we could go to school, our children can go to school, get all the education they want, and I've always learned from my boss that once you get an education, that can never be taken away from you. But if you don't, and you're not ready for a workforce world and learn what it's like to actually do the job, that education is only going to set you back, because you're going to be stuck on looking for that job that you think you got when you were, or what you think you should get because of that degree. So it's opening it up, and that's where I give Stockton a lot of credit.
Well, as a proud Stockton alumni, I say thank you.
I just wanted to add, the Atlantic County Institute of Technology at the high school level is providing the skill set, whether you want to continue your education or whether you want to go right into the workplace. We're very lucky with the county college we have here and other county colleges. They have rethought what they're doing. They're providing the skill set, and so is Rutgers, and so is Stockton. And what I mean is they're looking for the future, 5, 10 years down the road, and they're providing the skill set for energy changes that we're going to have in the jobs that are going to be created at esports, because that's a brand new concept that's coming on board, and we don't have the people that can run that type of program, and certainly anything to do with cyber technology. It's a whole new concept we're all worried about. We don't think about it until we get hacked, but that's going to be a great future. And I just want to say that I was very proud to support the governor's budget and vote for it, and one of the reasons was there was $10 million that went to Stockton College, which was much needed for our South Jersey area.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you all. This is really a model of kind of what bipartisan discussion should look like. Perhaps our national leaders could take a page out of New Jersey and how we do things with civility and thought and intellect and a good amount of friendship and humor. So can you join me in a round of applause for our legislators? Okay.
Oh, these are really
A little tough, yeah.
They're on? Okay, they're on. Well, if you would like to take your seat, we have a special guest, I believe. If one of my staff would give me a signal that we do have our special guest. And by the way, take your seats, because this is going to be probably the highlight of the program. You know, the past 4 or 5 years have been difficult ones for this state. Also, the past few months have been a personal difficulty for the governor and many of us. But aren't we lucky that we have a gentleman who knows how. Thanks. We have a gentleman that knows how to handle both COVID-19 and things far more important than that. So if you would permit me, I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming the governor of the state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, not easy, not easy. There we go. Hello, everybody. Good morning. To all of you who are celebrating, let me start by saying Shana Tova, Happy New Year, and wishing you a great Rosh Hashanah. Marlene, thank you so much for your very kind words, for your friendship, and for your leadership. You've been a great ally, along with everybody at the Southern New Jersey Development Council over the past now almost 6 years in office. And thank you for hosting me so graciously this morning. I was thinking, I don't do a whole lot of events. I'm not sure, I should ask Mark why, but we should, I don't do a lot of events at resorts, but I was thinking coming down here, it's a little bit of a historic treasure. When it opened in 1978, I believe, people lined up apparently for hours before my late and dear friend, Governor Brendan Byrne, cut the ribbon. And it ushered in, at that time, a new stage of nightlife and activity on the East Coast, never mind just in Atlantic City. And I was thinking, I think the resorts story is a good example of the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship that has always defined South Jersey. Whether it's the creation of the cultivated blueberry in the Pine Barrens, or whether it's all of those family-owned shops and businesses that line the Jersey Shore. And looking out here today and just looking through the list of folks who are going to be here this morning, I'm reminded of just how important the Southern New Jersey Development Council's mission is, not just to South Jersey, but to our state's future. You bring people together, and again, Marlene, I thank you for your leadership, but to all of you, you bring folks together across industries and sectors, and by doing so, you unleash economic growth, as I say, not just for South Jersey, but for all of New Jersey. I could list and shout out a lot of you by name, but I'm going to forget somebody if I do that. So as groups, I want to just thank the legislators, particularly the bipartisan Rockin' Group that just had a panel up here, the county and local officials, whether you be commissioners, mayors, or other. The resorts team, I mentioned Mark and his team, thank you for hosting us. Our dear Casino Commission members, federal officials with us today, representatives of higher education, and I want to end my acknowledgments with an apology to the UFC fight members in the group discussion after me, Messrs. Muller, Duhame, refereed by Dworkin, all good friends, and I wish you all the best. I was a little surprised not to see a steel cage up here. Back to higher ed. I mentioned higher ed, and you all know this, but Stockton and Atlantic Cape operate two wonderful campuses here in Atlantic City, and they provide a vital service to the community. Though I've got to say, if I were a student, I've said this to the leadership, especially at Stockton, I don't think I would get much studying done with the beach just outside my window. But that really also, at the same time, speaks to the magic of the Jersey Shore. You get, on the one hand, everyday essential life, but you get it with a dash of paradise. And honestly, I think that description applies not just to Atlantic City, but to all of South Jersey. And as it says in the Southern Jersey Development Council's tagline, down here we have 3,700 square miles of opportunity. And if we want to seize, and I mean truly seize, those thousands of miles of opportunity, then we need to continue to invest in South Jersey's future together. Frankly, it would be the height of insanity to pass that opportunity up. Because here in South Jersey, we have it all. And you know this better than I. Agriculture, healthcare, energy, innovation, education, tourism, on and on. I mean, look no further than right here in Atlantic City. We just wrapped up another banner summer down the shore, and it would have been almost unthinkable just a few years ago at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. But look at what happened these past few months. Our casinos were booming, our beaches were bustling, and our boardwalks up and down the shore, our wooden main streets, if you will, they were brimming with families and visitors, not just from all over Jersey or America, but from around the world. And I want to take this opportunity to both acknowledge the loss of our extraordinary Lieutenant Governor Sheila Y. Oliver, who spent so much of her time working with the leadership here in Atlantic City. But I also want to give a shout out to our new Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of State, Tahisha Way. Yeah. I say that because Tahisha has served as Secretary of State since the very beginning of our administration. And as Secretary of State, among other things, and that includes elections and overseeing our census, which is both of which are huge deals, she has done a phenomenal job supporting and strengthening South Jersey's tourism economy. In fact, this year, New Jersey's tourism economy is expected to generate about $48 billion in economic activity, and that is the biggest haul ever. And I do not say this to pat ourselves on the back, because we all know there's still, across the whole range of our interests, a lot of work to do. But that being said, New Jersey has come a long way in the past, now almost 6 years, and we're turning things around as we said we would for our economy. If you think back to the last administration, both in Trenton and in Washington, and I'm not being political when I say this, it's just a matter of fact, during those days, New Jersey was on the backslide. Our leaders thought small, and no surprise, when you think small, you get small results. And one of our biggest missteps back then was underinvesting in New Jersey's greatest resources of all, our people, our families, our small businesses. And that is exactly why, since the moment we came into office, our top priority has been thinking big about our state's future. And together, with all of your help, we've been investing in that future in a big way. For instance, over the past nearly 6 years, this is one example of many I could give you, New Jersey's Economic Development Authority, led by the incomparable Tim Sullivan, has dramatically expanded financial support for our small businesses. We've approved, just to give you one comparison, grants and loans for nearly 3,200 businesses. That is a 7-fold increase since 2018. Not 7%, not 70%, 7 times the amount of grants and loans that we put on the street 5 years ago. And as we've made these investments, we have, not surprisingly, emerged as a top 5 state for small business growth. And that growth has not just benefited business owners, but the workers that they employ as well. And compared to our peer states, this is a statistic that is a mouthful, but trust me, it's a leading indicator of what will come several years hence. New Jersey ranks near the top when it comes to new business applications for firms that have the highest potential for hiring employees and making payroll. So there's a difference between just a company a business that's a startup, but a startup with real potential to have a workforce and sustain itself. So looking ahead, I believe our responsibility is now to sustain the growth that we have unleashed in recent years, so every community in New Jersey, north, central, and south, benefits. And I think our economic strategy can really be boiled down into three simple parts. Investing in our state's talent and emerging industries so we can continue pioneering the innovations of tomorrow. I was just on back and forth with the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. They rebranded themselves, you may have seen yesterday. That's a great example of a company that planted its flag in New Jersey 137 years ago and are still here and employing thousands of folks in this state. We need the next generation of J&Js to be in this state. Secondly, rebuilding our state's infrastructure so we can support a world-class economy and create good paying, in this state, overwhelmingly union jobs. And finally, attracting the world's top minds by offering families a better quality of life that they can find anywhere else in the United States. So if I may, just for a couple of minutes, let me explain a little bit how we think we're bringing this economic vision to life, not just generally in New Jersey, but specifically here in South Jersey. First, as you all know, the region has massive potential to be the home base for our clean energy future, not limited to, but particularly with offshore wind. In fact, South Jersey is already reaping the benefits of building out this brand new industry with hundreds of jobs being created in manufacturing and construction and tens of thousands of more potential jobs on the way. And as I mentioned earlier, almost overwhelmingly union jobs. For instance, and I could give you many examples, in Salem County, we're in the process of completing phase one of the first purpose-built wind port in the entire country. And between that wind port and other offshore wind projects, whether they be in Paulsboro or here in Atlantic City or Ocean City, we're inching closer and closer to our goal of creating 11,000 megawatts of clean energy by the year 2040. And 2040 is not that far off. That's enough, you may ask. How much energy is that? It's enough energy to power 4.5 million homes. Our investments in wind energy, I think, are the ultimate win-win-win. We're going to combat climate change. And by the way, we're the most exposed state to sea level rise and climate change of any state in America. We're going to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. And thirdly, we're going to create, as I mentioned, thousands of good-paying, overwhelmingly union jobs. We're also making good progress on that second point when it comes to rebuilding New Jersey's infrastructure, which is a priority both for businesses and families alike. Just a few weeks ago, I was here in Atlantic City to sign the Boardwalk Preservation Fund into law. It created $100 million of a fund that will support the repair and renovation of boardwalks all along the shore. And by the way, a quick plug, shore communities can apply right now through the Department of Community Affairs to receive some of that funding. dca.nj.gov. dca.nj.gov. Just make sure you submit your proposal by the deadline, which is at the end of next month, October 31st. So our goal with the Boardwalk Preservation Fund is to continue attracting visitors and consumers to destinations like Atlantic City and other communities for decades to come. And with this funding, we're going to make our boardwalks at the same time more durable in the face of what we know will be climate change. That's good news. There's even better news. That $100 million did not come from the pockets of our state and local taxpayers. It came from the federal government. And on that note, may I also mention two more programs that we recently launched, a total of $80 million, also with federal monies, the Urban Investment Fund and the Atlantic City Economic Foundations Fund. So with both of those investments, We're going to revitalize, in the first instance, our urban areas, beginning with Camden. And, bless you, and we're going to create new, we don't miss a thing up here, by the way. We're going to create, easy now, create new economic opportunities right here in Atlantic City. And in doing so, we're going to build a stronger economic foundation for South Jersey's future. Let me riff for 30 more seconds on infrastructure. A couple of other things, one of which is happening, two of which I want to make happen. The first one that's happening is the Walter Rand Transit Center in Camden is getting completely redone. That'll probably take 5 to 10 years. We started it a couple of years ago. That will be a game changer, not just for the residents of Camden, but any folks who have a commute in and around or through Camden. Two other things that I still want to get done. The light rail connection between Glassboro and Camden is a big priority to unleash the funds that we need for that. I appreciate the applause, but we're not there yet. But I want to make sure you know that I'm going to die trying to get that one on the boards. And the other one is, just by the nature of South Jersey, we've mentioned this many times before, densifying, for lack of a better word, the bus routes in South Jersey. You know the part of the state better than I do. You know that would be a game changer for residents in a whole variety of communities. And then that third pillar I wanted to just spend a second on, which is we're also taking steps to attract the world's top talent to New Jersey by making sure that we remain the best state to raise a family. Whether it's our best in the nation public education system, or to our first in the nation record on public safety, and not to mention the peace of mind that your fundamental freedoms are protected in New Jersey without question. We have established ourselves as the most family-friendly state in the entire country. I've said this to you before, every state has a bumper sticker. Some of them are you don't pay state taxes, or we have warm weather in the winter. Ours is very simply the #1 state in America to raise a family. And almost everything we do drives into that bumper sticker. We're also at the same time taking strides to ensure our workers can outcompete anyone by expanding support for vocational training and apprenticeship programs. One example right here in Atlantic City, down the street in the Jim Whalen Boardwalk Hall, where the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority has opened a new training facility for painters. Or another example, the Wind Power Ready program, a partnership between Rowan College of South Jersey and Orsted. They're working together to prepare our state's residents for careers as wind turbine technicians. And that's just one of many training programs being introduced in a bunch of counties. Atlantic right here, Salem, Gloucester, Camden come to mind, to give our neighbors a leg up in pursuing a career in offshore wind, especially women and persons of color. And really, there's a simple rationale for expanding programs that train and support working New Jerseyans, and that is the fact that New Jersey is the quintessential middle-class state. After all, it was the middle class that helped build New Jersey in the first place, and it will be the middle class that will be at the forefront of building our future. So the more we invest in our middle class, the more money those folks will put back into the economy, and that is a virtuous cycle that will lead us to a better future for every family. And as we build that future, I know that we can count on the Southern New Jersey Development Council's continued partnership. You have stood up for, I know organizations like this up and down the state. You all stand tall for standing up for every community in South Jersey, from Cape May to Chesterfield and everybody in between, for more than half a century. And together, we will make sure that South Jersey leads the next half century of innovation and prosperity. Where'd Marlene go? Will you permit me another couple of minutes to riff on a couple of topics that I was noodling on last night? A couple of thoughts. One, to give you a sense of our mindset of how we've approached the economy. We inherited, I think, a broken state in many respects. So in one respect, we're in a relative comparison of where we were versus where we are. And we are obsessed with that. And we look at metrics, whether it's the size of the surplus in our budget, whether we're getting upgrades or downgrades, happily upgrades from rating agencies. We look at our state's revenues. We look at the birth of new industries that didn't exist 6 years ago, like offshore wind. So in one respect, we're comparing ourselves to where we were. And that's a journey that we're on together. We're not patting ourselves on the back. We've made an enormous amount of progress. We are who we said we would be. We're fixing this place. But importantly, there's not only more progress yet to make, but we have to make sure when we walk out of here in 2+ years and hang up our cleats, that New Jersey's on a strong foundation and that we never slip back to those bad old days. The second comparison that we make is how are we doing against other states, and being clear-eyed about what you can control and what you can't control. I'll talk about Washington in a minute, but the example that probably is the best one of what we can't control is a war in Europe. That's not something that any of us saw coming or wanted. But let's be obsessed with the things that we can control, putting funding where our words are, investing in those 3 pillars that I mentioned in my remarks. And we're obsessed with monitoring how we're doing versus other American states. I'm a recovering banker, and in the stock market, there's the notion of systematic risk and unsystematic risk. And for those of you who aren't in that milieu, systematic risk is the risk you take with the market, the stuff you can't control. Was the Dow Jones up or down? Did the Fed raise interest rates or cut them? Was there a war in Europe that led to a supply chain challenge? It's the general risks of being in the business, in my case now, of being the chief executive of a state. The unsystematic risk is the stuff you can control. And that's where we are obsessed in comparing ourselves with other states. And the news lately on that front is unequivocally, across the board, really good. Everything from the hard stuff, CNBC ranked us as the biggest improving state in which to do business. We're top 3 to both live and work recently by another independent survey. This week, we got ranked in the top 5 happiest states in America. Go figure, I'll take it. When you look at those, and there are many others, we've been upgraded 6 or 7 times by the rating agencies. In the prior administration, we were downgraded 11 times. So we're not only, to put a capstone on that, we not only compare ourselves where we were to where we are as a state, but also where we are as compared to other American states. A word about Washington, Marlene, if I may, and it's a tale of 2 cities for us. The good news is things like the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, the largest infrastructure project right now in America is the Gateway program, building 2 more tunnels up north under the Hudson River. That's all good news for us. I don't think we've got the energy price profile that we want or will have, or the amount of land, perhaps, that we would need to build a big fab production facility. But because we're an innovation economy, we're going to get an enormous amount out of that CHIPS Act. The IRA is largely a climate change act. It will propel a lot of the stuff that we're already doing. And as I mentioned, the bipartisan infrastructure law for the nation's most densely populated state is a huge boon for us. And most of those monies have not yet been spent anywhere, but in specific in New Jersey. That's the good news. The bad news is the self-inflicted wounds of an incapable Congress of getting comprehensive immigration reform done, where the elements of that are clear as we're sitting here. It's this wash, rinse, repeat impeachment cycle. It's not being able to raise the debt levels. It's the threat of shutdowns. None of that is good for America or for New Jersey. And that feeds into that systematic risk that is largely beyond our control. I just stepped down as the chair of the National Governors Association, and I'm still an active member. We have tried like heck to give air cover to Congress and ultimately the administration to get a bipartisan immigration reform done. The elements of that are clear. Whether we like it in my party or not, we're going to have to secure the border, period. Secondly, we're going to have to find a pathway to status that is acceptable for the 15 to 20 million folks who are already in America illegally. And thirdly, we're going to have a really smart, legal, responsible, jobs-oriented, economic-oriented, legal immigration system. It's not that hard, but you'd never believe that looking at it from the outside. And I'll leave you lastly, Marlene, if I can. People ask me all the time, what's my economic outlook? And for me, at least, it is quite sanguine. In other words, this notion that we've been able to come through this extraordinary period of a pandemic, enormous federal stimulus, supply chain challenges, a war in Europe, inflation, the Federal Reserve raising rates at almost, not quite, but almost at a historic, unprecedented level. To be where we are as a country, frankly, as a globe, in our respective economies is pretty remarkable. And I think, here's my only, I don't want to leave you on a down note, I think we are overweighting in our probability crystal ball selves as we look out over the next 12 to 18 months. I think we're overweighting the soft landing and underweighting what I fear will be some amount of persistent inflation. Not rampant, but I don't think it's going to go away as quickly or as starkly as many now expect. And if that's true, we could have a little bit of something less than a soft landing in our economy, which would mean the Fed would probably continue to raise rates. My guess is a couple of more times. That means it'll continue to be more expensive to buy a home or to buy a car or whatever else you want to buy. I think it probably means unemployment trends up somewhat. Again, this is America, not specific to us. So again, I think we're generally in a good place. Our revenues have stayed about as what we've projected through the middle of September, which is today. Not exactly on target, but pretty much on target. That's a good metric for us in real time. You know, we get revenues daily, so we know what the sales tax generated yesterday. So we know that's a real-time sense of consumption and people's confidence in the economy. So I think we're in a decent place, but I think if there's a risk, the risk is on the downside. Not that the roof's going to fall in, but that we're going to have more inflation than we'd like. The Fed will be raising rates more than cutting them. Unemployment probably gets nicked. General economic outlook gets nicked. Again, not the roof falling in, but on the margin, a little bit of concern that we're underweighting a more challenging future. With that, again, we're going to do everything we can with your great partnership and support to make sure that no matter what the environment is, that New Jersey is poised to outperform. And I'll leave you with this other theory of how we think about this. We want to perform through a cycle and generate, this is another way of putting the point about outperformance in a different context. We want to generate more revenues at the state level than we otherwise would have through a cycle, recognizing economic cycles go kind of like this, again, than we otherwise would have with the old economy. We try to keep our expenses under wrap. We have fewer employees at the state meaningfully than we did when I put my hand on the Bible in January of 2018. We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish with that, by the way. We'll put a ton more investments into technology and innovation so that we're able to do more with less. But again, we want to be able to generate a better profile than we otherwise would have. And that gives us latitude, folks, that New Jersey hasn't had for a long time. Remember, we used to be a AAA bond-rated state, and we're no longer, but we're on the climb back. And if you look at those rating agencies' decisions, or you look at these other objective third-party polling of how Jersey's doing, you get some amount of confidence that we'll be able to do just what I said, not just outperform other states, but outperform what New Jersey would have performed as had we just kept the old economy and the old level of investments. So with that, thanks, Marlene, for letting me riff a little bit. God bless you all. God bless the great state of New Jersey and the United States of America.
Thank you so much, Governor Murphy. We appreciate you being here and addressing the Southern New Jersey Development Council. We really do appreciate your continued focus on Southern New Jersey, and we encourage you to continue to do that. And thank you for your service to the people in the communities here in the state of New Jersey. So he says to me over here, Ben, just so you know, he's looking forward to a food fight. So stay tuned to this panel because I think it's going to be pretty good. So we have a point-counterpoint panel next, and I think it's going to be a great way to end this conference. But I want to introduce your moderator, who's a good friend of mine, Dr. Ben Dworkin. Dr. Dworkin serves as the founding director of the Rowan Institute for Public Policy and Citizenship at Rowan University in Glassboro, and he teaches courses in the Department of Political Science. He's appeared on numerous network and cable news shows and is frequently quoted in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and the Chicago Tribune, and also the Los Angeles Times. Ben, let's kick it up a notch. Please welcome Dr. Ben Dworkin.
All right, let's get ready to rumble. This is going to be fun. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to the Development Council. Good morning, everybody. We can do it. Come on, good morning. You've had coffee now. Let's do it. It's been a full agenda so far. I'm happy to say the hits are just keep on coming. You know, there's an old story about the professor who had a student come to him to ask for a real serious evaluation. The student wanted to know, come on, you've seen me in class, what do I need to understand in order to get that job when I graduate? And the professor said to the student, well, one of your problems is that you procrastinate too much. Oh yeah, said the student incredulously. Oh, just you wait. We don't have to wait now. Thanks for laughing, appreciate the 3 people out there. We don't have to wait to get some real elite level analysis. And so I am honored to be here to moderate this discussion between the 2 Michaels, both of whom I am proud to call personal friends, as well as friends of RIPAC and Rowan University. Are they coming up? Yeah, okay, I'll start with you. Okay. Mike Duhame is the Republican strategist, CEO of MAD Global Strategies. He has worked as a senior advisor for President George W. Bush, Senator John McCain, and Governor Chris Christie. This Mike has also appeared on Good Morning America, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, the BBC. He is cited regularly in the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. And our other Mike, who is getting mic'd right now, I will just go through his internet. Michael Mueller, about to come up and join us, is a Democratic strategist, president of Mueller Public Strategies. He is credited with building the New Jersey Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee into one of the DAC, as everyone calls it, into one of the nation's leading legislative leadership vehicles. He has elected several candidates to federal office, dozens to state legislative office. He was the state director for Mike Bloomberg's 2020 presidential campaign, New Jersey campaign director for Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign, chief strategist for Congressman Jeff Van Drew back in 2018. So, please join me in welcoming the 2 Mikes. Come on over. Okay, gentlemen, let us begin here. We just heard from Governor Phil Murphy. He covered a lot of ground, and I'd just like to start with your general reaction. I've been trying to think about how to do this, and so if I just call you directly by your last name,
That works.
I think that might work, right? So,
That works.
Mr. Duhaime, what did you think of the governor's remarks?
Listen, I have a great deal of respect for the governor and what he's tried to do with the state. I found interesting what he said toward the end about business and what they've done and the budget to be lacking in some capacity in terms of one important element, and that's tax policy and a predictable business climate. And so it's wonderful that we've got great schools. It's wonderful that we all have this. I was just talking to a business leader earlier this week who told me he may move across the border to Pennsylvania because he'll save $200,000 in taxes. And that's somebody who'll bring employees as well and bring his children and others too. So I think the one place, since this is the political side of the discussion, where Democrats have been vulnerable in the last few years has been on economic policy. And it's generally when Republicans can win in a state where there are 1 million more Democrats than Republicans, it's when independents move away from Democrats on tax policy and economic policy. It's why Christie Whitman won. It's why Governor Chris Christie won. And frankly, it's why it was so close last time, in that one, turnout was way down compared to most presidential years. So that million advantage goes way down when you don't have the higher turnout. But frankly, affordability issues. And I think Ciattarelli had a good shot to win. So I think that's an issue. I think the legislative leaders on the Democratic side have heard that message loud and clear and have reacted over the last 2 years to make up for the previous 4 years. We borrowed $4 billion. We had a ton of COVID money. The budget is 50% higher than when Governor Christie left. It only grew 18% under Governor Christie's 8 years. It's grown 50% in Phil Murphy's 6 years. So I think Governor Murphy's actually a fairly well-liked guy, because I think people think he's a nice person and means well and does that. And the state is an affluent state and does have good education levels. But I think from the political side of things, where the opportunity comes is when Democrats kind of are vulnerable on economic issues, and I think where the budget's been and where the tax policy's been,
So-
borrowing has left that opening.
I'm going to keep trying to keep moving, so I might end up
No, I want to
interrupting
filibuster the
all
whole
of you.
time. So I'm only
Yeah,
gonna
so
talk.
I figured that.
I'll find a way to get more than
I'm going to cut you off too, don't worry about it. So, Mike Mueller, how do you react to Mike Duhaime? What was your take on the governor?
So it's interesting when you listen to the remarks, and look, I will say this from having done legislative campaigns, and I'll get very political here, for the last 20 plus years in New Jersey. Usually in a legislative midterm, we're trying to dance around where the governor wants to be, where we want to be. But we're sitting in this room and we have the governor talking about affordability. We're talking about infrastructure. And when you get back to the budget, we got the greatest political calling card, because let's talk about this from a South Jersey budgetary perspective. We're in a legislative midterm election, and in two of the biggest races in New Jersey, the 2nd legislative district here in Atlantic County, and over in the 8th legislative district, primarily in Burlington County. And we saw on stage earlier today talking about, despite all of the rhetoric of $8 billion in new spending in the last 2 years, we're more unaffordable. Well, in those two really competitive races, the legislative Republicans in those districts voted for $8 billion in new spending because they support this governor's budget. So kudos to Governor Murphy to bring those Republicans over, who will be in very tough races in the next few months.
I think, Mike Duhaime, let me jump back at you and hit on something you said. And if you want to react to Mike Mueller's point about, hey, Republicans like this so much in the competitive districts, they're going, let's start with that. Let's go with, can you respond to what Mike Mueller just said? Republicans like this budget, and that's why they voted for it in some of these competitive
Not all
districts.
Republicans, some did. I mean, in the 2nd district, Republicans are going to win. 8th district is going to be competitive. I think Republicans are going to win. There's a number of other competitive districts. These are tough districts. All of the competitive districts are by nature almost Democratic districts when it comes to registration. The registration advantage is so big in the state. So I just think voters don't necessarily look at each legislative vote, right? They vote on field. Now, the voters who come out this year are going to be the most intensely well-informed voters that there are, because it's such a low turnout. If you come out in the state legislature is the top of the ticket, and you're serious, right? Everybody in here, you're not a typical voter, because you would never be at something like this if you were. So I think in those districts, it's going to be bigger than just that. I think Mike's point about the 6th year, the midterm piece, that's where a challenge for the party in power, not just for Democrats, but the party in power generally. There comes a a malaise, and that's probably the best case scenario. And then I think at the federal level, even as the governor just talked about, there's these kind of mixed feelings at the federal level, which was going on. But again, the Democrats are perceived as in power, even though Republicans are perceived in the House. So if Democrats are perceived in power in the presidency and perceived in power here, and this is a 6-year midterm, that's going to line up with us. I don't think every single voter is going to look at every single vote the legislators make. If they're discontent with the economy and a few other things, they'll take it out on the party in power.
You talked about, I want to get back to taxes and ask you both here. You know, Mike Duhane mentioned you were talking to a business leader who was going to move to Pennsylvania, save $200,000 in taxes. So if that's the case, why hasn't everybody left? Like, why do we still have businesses here?
Because we have the greatest advantage in the world of being right next to New York City and then having Philadelphia at the other end of the state. The drawing power of New York City is as great as anything in the entire world. And people come here, they live here, they raise their kids here, they make their money here, and then when they retire, they leave. And that's horrible. They are drawn here because New York City is huge and Philadelphia is huge. Now we've got great beaches, great coastlines. A lot of people from Philly come in and buy nice houses in Stone Harbor and Avalon. But I mean, Governor Kane used to say that the secret to New Jersey's success will be having our taxes a little bit lower than New York and a little bit lower than Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and we'll be fine. And we're higher now. It's a huge mistake that's happened over the years, and we shouldn't believe our own press releases about that. I mean, New York has been great. If New York didn't get cleaned up in the 90s, who knows what New Jersey and North Jersey would look like. I mean, that's a huge part of it. And right now, we're driving people across the borders as opposed to bringing them in to work there and live here.
Mike Mueller, is that it? Is it just, you agree with that analysis? Just New York and Philadelphia's drawing power and our
Look,
geographic?
I'm probably like one of the worst examples because I'm a New Yorker who decided to go move to New Jersey and then settle in South Jersey. So, but I'll give you a little bit of a different perspective on it. You know, when you look at this, look, we invest in our schools. We have the best public schools in America. There are areas where people choose to live here. There is greatness in New Jersey. It's not just the proximity to New York or Philadelphia. It is the fact that, look, we have the Jersey Shore. We are a stone's throw away from it. There is some really great parts of New Jersey that we're all so proud of. And, and frankly, look, this is probably not the reason people are going to draw here, but you should stay here because this will be very unpopular in this room. But hey, this is going to be the home of the Stanley Cup champions next year, the New Jersey Devils.
We agree on that. We agree
there
on
you
that
go.
greatly.
We have found two hockey fans.
But I think that's important to know. I mean, New Jersey does have greatness, and I've worked in campaigns in 40 states, and I love this state, and I've been all over the country, and I'm never leaving New Jersey. And all the things Mike say are true. It's just a matter of there is a little bit of an arrogance sometimes in our state government to say that we're so great that we can just keep pushing you a little bit further, and tax you a little bit more and take a little bit more, and you'll still stay because of all the greatness. And to me, it's like a little bit of a lack of respect for some of the constituents here, and we need to just be cognizant of that.
And look, I just want to add, and this is one of the things, I think we'll have a lot of agreement on this, because I think when it comes to tax policy, look, it's an area that we have to keep striving to do better. It is a state, it's a high cost of living state, and a lot of that is just because of the proximity of where we are. We're in this northeastern corridor, but I will say this. One of the big steps forward, and this is where bipartisan support, was seen in the legislature. The property tax cut, you want to keep people here. Senior citizens getting a 50% property tax cut, you know what? You're not going to see that migration out. These seniors are going to want to stay here because we're dealing with the root cause, which is high property taxes in the state. So that was a big step forward.
Okay. Let me exit question for the governor's reaction to the governor's address that we just heard. Mike Mueller, start with you. How much of an influence will Governor Murphy have on the outcome of the upcoming legislative elections this November?
Well, look, and this actually, it's a point that Mike hit early on. I think it's really an important piece of this. When you look at this, in the last, and I think it's about 70 plus years, the party in power, who controls the governor's office, has only one time, it was in 2003, which was, one of our early cycles with the caucus when I was running it, we wound up picking up seats. You don't gain seats in these legislative midterms historically. It's really tough. And we as a state, we tend to eat our governors up. Those second terms are really, really rough in this state. But ultimately, what's interesting here is that we're in a very, different cycle than usually. Look, Democrats hate when I say this, but I'm going to be stone cold honest. 2018, it was a blue wave. They like saying that. 2021, it was a red wave. We got kicked in the teeth. And so for one of the first times ever, the legislative midterm actually is going to look like a better Democratic environment than the gubernatorial, because after Trump losing January 6th, mandates, COVID, it was a toxic tonic we lived through. So this year actually is a bit better than 2 years, and it's one of the reasons why I will disagree vehemently with Mike in Districts 2 and 8. These are going to be races that are not ones to call yet. These are going to be fights to the finish. There's going to be some very, very, very surprised people on election night, because this legislative midterm will actually have growth off of 21 for Democrats, because it'll be a bit of an inverse, because we were in a political context that was an anomaly like 2018 and 2021 in the inverse.
So Mike Duhame, exit question. What kind of influence will Governor Murphy have on the outcome of these legislative elections?
Well, it's interesting. To play off Governor Murphy and what Mike said, I agree that it's possible that it'll be better, but if you were sitting here this time in 2021, none of us saw that coming. You could say that in retrospect that it's going to be better, but nobody saw how bad it was going to be until election day. Nobody. The governor's polling, public polling, nobody saw how bad it was at that point. I think the governor is he's in an interesting spot. I mean, you're right about we tend to chew up our governors by the second term. He is neither hated nor beloved in this state. He is, he's kind of liked. Even people who don't like his policies don't dislike him personally. Even people who like his policies are not like, beating down the doors and want to go out and volunteer to make sure he's got a legislative majority, please, so Phil Murphy can enact everything he wants. He is kind of middle of the road, which in a state, that's very blue, that's good enough for him. So I don't think he's going to have a tremendous effect. I think to some extent it goes back to that. He's been here 6 years. Democrats have been controlled for 20 years. In some of these swing districts, they really want balance in government. You see, since 1994, really, at the federal side, we keep making sure that no party has both branches of government or both houses of Congress. And I think in New Jersey, you might see a little bit of that too, where they just want some balance and some pushback to the governor.
I want to jump into the national scene. As much as we like to think of ourselves as different here in New Jersey from everybody, we're Jersey, we're different. The fact is, our state is not an island. The national political scene has ripple effects on our economy, on our culture, in Trenton, on our politics. And so, Mike Mueller, right now it looks like we're heading towards a national government shutdown at the end of this month, something that would likely have a major impact on New Jersey's economy. So, your perspective, do you think the shutdown is actually going to happen, or are we going to avoid it at the midnight hour? And if so, more importantly, because we're talking about politics, who's going to get blamed? Which party?
Look, at the end of the day, first and foremost, we will likely avoid it, because there are these great moments when you have a real deadline in the 11th hour. Everyone realizes we have to figure it out, and even we've had some state shutdowns here, and I will tell you what's interesting is timing and the impact is really interesting. I'm going to tell a little story from the Corzine 2006 shutdown, which I thought was also like who gets blamed in it. Look, eventually, the chief executive can be in a really tough spot, because eventually it's the person that they actually see. And both sides will push back and forth in rhetoric. But I will tell you what was interesting. When the state shut down, it was a pretty big story in that summer. And I was nervous about our next upcoming legislative cycle. So I'm like, let's go in the field. Let's poll all of our key districts. 2 months later, outside of the 2nd district because of Atlantic City and casino closures, we were seeing numbers, 15%, 18% on average. Even knew we ever shut down in the first place. So what happens, the news cycle changes, you move on. So it's about timing. We were so far away from that next election, a couple of months goes by. The timing of when these cliffs happen really can matter. And a lot of levels, just not to jump all over the place, but, in 2019, when we were dealing with impeachment on a national level was becoming a real story, that was in the final week of our state legislative races, and a place like District 1, where we wound up, having a very, very tough problem because it seeped in there. It really did impact us in a place that had a lot of Republicans, and that we relied on crossover votes, and it came back and kicked us in the teeth in that election. So there are moments where the timing matters.
So, timing aside, if there's a federal government shutdown, are the Democrats going to take the blame because Biden is in charge?
It's gonna depend on who handles it better in terms of laying out the message and fighting back. It won't necessarily, you got a Republican Congress that we're gonna try to blame, others will try to blame Biden.
Okay.
It's gonna be, it's how do you sell it?
Mike Duhane, what's your take? If there's a government shutdown, which party is going to get the blame?
It'll be, I think Mike's right that normally it's the chief executive, but, and Kevin McCarthy's not crazy. Some of the people in caucus are crazy, and he's trying to deal with the crazies, and he's trying to placate the crazies and keep them, give them a little bit here. If I feed you a little bit here out of, impeachment proceedings, leave me alone on the other stuff.
You talking about Jeff Andrew again?
I'm not, hey, he was in your resume, not mine. You got him elected, good job.
Fair point.
I think
We'll ask about who takes that blame later. But
I think ultimately it goes back to the chief executive, but it could be played differently. And one thing that's changed a lot in the 20 years since we talk about some of these other shutdowns, Tip O'Neill's "all politics is local" is dead. All politics is national. I mean, look at your daily newspapers. I mean, look how much the Star Ledger circulation's gone down. Look at the Philadelphia Inquirer here. Look at the Atlantic City Press. Look at how much the circulation has gone down. The Courier Post. Look at all those. I mean, there is no local coverage. When we started, and we were doing this 20 years ago, every single daily newspaper in New Jersey had a reporter or two or even three in the State House. Nobody does anymore. And everything now is national. So everybody's getting their news from Fox or MSNBC. Everybody can pick their side and convince themselves that their side is right. They can look at their own Facebook feed, which is fed by people who think the same thing as them. And so it's going to be nationalized. So that's that could have a more impactful impact on this year's elections than anything that actually goes on in the state.
I want to just sort of touch on this and bring it back to an impact, an effect that might happen here in New Jersey. If we end up in this situation where, like, well, there's spin on one side if you're watching MSNBC, there's spin if you're watching Fox, and both parties kind of get blamed, well, that's just Washington and it's dysfunctional. How does that affect the turnout here, if at all? We're already expecting pretty low turnout, about 27%, if you sort of looked at old averages of registered voters in this November's election. Is this kind of does a federal government shutdown affect, since Mike Duhane, you just talked about how it's all national now, so is it going to impact, like, even fewer people are going to show up?
It almost can't go lower in terms of the turnout. I mean, it was 40% in the governor's race a few years ago, and that's really low. Usually we get at least 50% in governor's races. It was only 22%, I think, in 2019 in that neighborhood. I mean, that's god-awful, so 27 would be an increase. So, I mean, the New Jersey State Constitution specifically puts state elections in the off years to stay away from what they call the passions of the federal election. So I think that 1 in 5 registered voters, which is really like 1 in 10 residents, will actually come out to vote. I think they'll still come out to vote. I do think for those in the middle, those swing voters, the national political climate could impact that small number.
Yeah, and look, I'll say one of the things that's really kind of like interesting, and this is just the nature of where the politics of our country is, and it affects us in, even down to local races. But we are in such a polarized environment that, look, there are no-name Democrats that will poll, and all of a sudden they're consolidated better than ever before. And the same is true with the no-name Republican candidate running in certain districts.
When you say no name, just so we all understand.
Just people who are running for the first time, they don't have a profile in district. If you're an incumbent legislator like the great Carol Murphy, her numbers are through the roof. So, of course, people know who she is.
Just editor's note, he's actually related to Carol Murphy, just husband, spouse. Okay.
But on the flip side, if you're somebody who is running for the first time for the state legislature, and let's say you're a council member in a town of 20,000 people, well, now you're running with a population of 230,000+ people. Like, you come into this with no real name ID. So, but we're seeing Democrats see you're a Democrat, they're with you. And it's more so than normal. And it's also true for this type of lower turnout year, and same with Republicans. And the middle is shrinking and shrinking because people know, am I wearing a blue jersey or am I wearing a red jersey? They understand that a lot more. But it really is going to be about motivation. Who is actually able to move the meter on turnout, and who does a better job with that? That's going to be critical, and some of that context can seep in and motivate people, but a lot of it, the white noise of the lead up into the presidential caucuses and primaries, that's what's on Fox and MSNBC. So it's almost like it's who could do a better side of injecting that into these veins, and then you're saying, no, you got to be here. in 2023 because most of them aren't even thinking there's an election this year. It's completely tone deaf because we say what's the core voter this year? It's someone who's probably voted in 4 of the last 4 general elections. If you're someone who votes in 2 of 4, 3 of 4, you're probably not showing up because the last election you missed was the last legislative midterm.
So, Mike Duhame, I mean, that seems to make sense. Is that basically your take as well?
Yeah, I mean, turnout is really, it's huge. For Republicans, it's helpful because we're the minority party in terms of registration. It would be helpful in Utah for the Democrats, and the same thing. Because just think about it, a million voter registration advantage. If turnout is 22% or 20%, that million goes to 200,000. Then you divide that by 40 districts. I know it's not roughly even, but then that advantage is 5,000 per district, right? That's a very attainable thing to overcome, especially with Republicans. You have to win independents. To win statewide, you need like 65% of independents. In some of these competitive districts, you may only need to win 55%.
Let's jump into on a stick just because the nationalization of our elections. Mike Duhame, Donald Trump under indictment, 4 different jurisdictions. According to the polls, far and away the leading candidate to be the GOP's nominee for president 24. New Jersey voters had a pretty bad reaction to Donald Trump the first time around. It had negative impacts, effects on the party throughout the state. Should we expect, as we now go through, should we expect the same kind of negative reaction to Trump's candidacy and the Republican Party as we go through the rest of 23 and 24 because he remains such a prominent figure?
Yeah, he doesn't help. He doesn't help the party. Mike might do mailers with Trump's face on it, you know, to independent voters in some of these districts because he's still around. I mean, he's a disaster for the party. Republicans have always had 6 or 7 members of Congress, and in the first midterm of him, we go down to 1, 2 members of Congress now. I mean, it's a disaster, and anybody who thinks otherwise is like fooling themselves. I didn't vote for him. Like, he didn't lose. I mean, he lost. He didn't win the election. He lost all these states. He lost all these states by a lot. This is what I do for a living. I know how many votes come out of Philadelphia and Milwaukee and Detroit and Atlanta. He lost. He actually did better in the urban areas than he did 4 years prior. Where he lost were the suburban areas. He lost places like Morris County. Find the Morris County of every other state. That's where he lost. It wasn't stolen in Morris County, just like it wasn't stolen in Georgia or anywhere else. He's a disaster. He's selfish. I have worked with a lot of people in politics, and just think about the people who meet in politics, right? Think of a state like Governor Christie, my guy, Governor Murphy, right? Think of the self-confidence everybody has in politics. There's 9 million people in the state. I'm going to look in the mirror and think I'm the one who should run it. Imagine the people who run for president. There's 350 million people. I think I'm the best person to run the biggest country and most important country in the world. I think that's great. Like, there are a lot of people with huge egos. I've never seen anybody more toxic and more self-centered and more conceited than him. He's a disaster for the party, and it's not just ideological. He has taken and twisted party, and people who know better in my party have stood by, and the people who raised their hands on the debate stage and said they would support him if he's a convicted felon, they know better. And that's what's disgusted me about my party the last 4 years. It's awful, and we're not gonna come back nationally as a party until we eradicate him. And that the only way to do it is try to beat him. And beat him. Hopefully we can beat him in the primary. But like he and those who think like him and who know, I want to get back to legitimate policy disagreements. We should not be like lying about the state. Like, we need to still argue about these horrible things 100 years from now. The things that we disagree on, 100 years from now, we can disagree on taxes. Guess what? Abortion is going to be an issue in 100 years. Social Security is going to be an issue in 100 years. But none of it will matter if we don't get somebody away who tries to basically take away the fact that like elections matter and that we settle our differences at the ballot box, not with insurrection.
So, Mike, let me just there you go. Mike Mueller just is briefly, because we got another like 7 minutes.
You're asking Michael Mueller to be brief?
Yes, I'm asking Mike Mueller to be brief, as impossible as that sounds. Listen, does Trump still play a role? Is it already baked in? People applauded. They knew what they wanted to hear. Mike Duhame went, off, said something that a lot of people in this room obviously agreed with. Is it already baked in, or do votes actually shift because Donald Trump is on TV every day?
It's not about shift. This is about motivation and turnout, because if you remind people what really is at stake, and look, there are candidates here there are some people who've got themselves aligned with Donald Trump. We have a very hot Senate race in the 3rd District. Ed Durr has decided to be the Donald Trump of South Jersey, and you know what? That's going to play a big role in that race, because people talk about Trump having won that district. He won it by 3 percentage points. If I can motivate Democrats because they want to fight back there, he is going to be a poster child. So the candidates matter because some of them are wrapping themselves around Donald Trump because they're not looking at this in the way that Mike is.
Let me keep moving this along. Mike Mueller, the president, Joe Biden, has a 39% approval rating. Is he, with his low approval rating, going to be an albatross around legislative candidates this year? Or is that's, as much as it's nationalized, we don't really care?
Look, both sides are going to take the weakness of the national political, who are going to be the standard bearers on both sides as of we look at it today, if we, turned and said who's going to be the nominee today, which obviously, things can change. But what you're going to see is both sides are going to try to motivate their base about the failures of past and current presidents to those members of the party, and that's going to be the battle for turnout.
Let me, I want to jump in, unless you wanted to add any.
I would just add Biden could blow it in 2 years. He could lose to Trump. Hillary Clinton blew it. Hillary Clinton lost the election more than Trump won it, and Democrats kind of lost on the economic argument to people who were feeling like they were left behind, and Biden could blow it. I'm surprised. Just about any other Democrat could beat Donald Trump, so I'm surprised there's not more of a push in the Democratic Party for him to serve one term and move on.
Let's jump on it. I want to get into at least one big issue, and that's immigration. Obviously, for a number of reasons, New York City, along with several other cities, are facing a surge in their migrant population. And after some very public complaining by the mayor and the governor in New York, the Biden administration floated the idea of housing some of these migrants in federal facilities, including Atlantic City Airport. So it's become very much an issue that affects the folks in this area. So the question is this, Mike Duhame, how much will immigration actually be an issue in New Jersey legislative elections this year?
It could be
I
an
mean,
issue.
Everyone's come out against it, all public officials.
It could be an issue for two reasons. One is that it was normally like a rallying cry for Republicans. It wasn't major Democrats saying that the federal government is failing. It was Republicans. So it used to be a motivator for Republicans. Now that you have both parties saying that the federal government is failing and the Democrats are in charge of the federal government, that could hurt swing voters. The second, frankly, is saying one thing and doing another in this state. I mean, Governor Murphy proudly proclaimed New Jersey a sanctuary state and took the benefit of that, took the votes for that from the left, took what that meant to the Hispanic community, and now it's called upon for us to actually be a sanctuary state, and we go back on our word. I think that's bad. That's bad theater. Regardless of the policy, you can't say one thing and do another and not have it come up.
Mike Mueller, what's your reaction?
Yeah, and in all fairness, look, when the Biden administration suggested, it's kind of incredulous. You have a county that is less than 300,000 people, and so we're now going to basically say, let's move 60,000 people here. And look, I'm proud of Atlantic County. There's a lot of steps forward. We have been, we've had to go through some tough times, turning the corner. It was very disruptive. It's why everyone across the board was where they were at the end of the day. It's an issue that, I'm glad that we're all unified and saw that it didn't make sense here. And frankly, part of the problem with this is really simply, this is about the polarization. You can't consider sending migrants from New York City to a state that is a red state governor. So there are fewer places. So Biden's looking at blue states that maybe he can push this through. And thankfully, Phil Murphy was very quick to react and be out there, because what he said in 2017 in the election, in all reality, where we're here in 2023, very narrowly in this specific place, it was a really, really bad idea.
I know, but this is where voters turn on politicians of either party. You cannot, for years, as Democrats, stand up and criticize the Republican Party and say how horrible we are in immigration, and then when you have a chance to do something, I'll say, oh, no, we don't want to be. By the way, we're the wealthiest state in the country. We're the wealthiest state in the wealthiest country in the world. But no, we can't have immigrants here. Let's leave them in Texas, and let's criticize Abbott, and let's criticize the 4 border states that have people pouring over into their tiny cities and counties. But no, we'll grandstand during the election, but then we won't actually do anything about it. Voters get sick of that kind of stuff.
You think they're following it, though? I mean, you were just talking about how no one's really following the news. No one really, do they remember that 4 years ago?
If they follow it. I don't know if they will. I talked about it. It's in the Star Ledger today a little bit. I don't know how many people will follow it.
Well, and how many people read your column?
And how many people, because Mike's right. Like on a policy point of view, you can have the discussion on a policy point of view, whether it makes sense here and now and all that, and you can get yourself into that position. But like But the grandstanding and then giving the Heisman to the immigrants when they come in, while we've criticized every other governor, voters don't like that.
Let's, I want to just jump in. We got about 5 minutes left to run through some stuff. Let's just talk about the legislative races. Right now, Democrats control both houses, 46-34 majority in the Assembly, 25-15 majority in the Senate. Mike Mueller, come the day after Election Day, or come January, are Democrats going to be in control of both houses?
I'll say yes, but I will say this. This is, like, let's be very honest. I'm not going to, this isn't spin. This is the worst legislative map for Democrats the last 20 years. We won the last 2 map processes, and naturally, if Democrats and Republicans agreed on a map, there was areas that we took some actual real hits. So it has made it more complicated for Democrats, and in some of these key areas, Republicans, if they pulled it inside straight, if you had a perfect cycle, you could run the table, you could win back the majority. It's not going to happen, and part of the reason it's not going to happen is that we are in a situation here. I often talk about in these races about where's the vote share and how things are moving. What's really been a huge growth when we talk about vote by mail, early voting, ways that it's made it easier for people to vote in the state, post-COVID, we have all really seen the growth. We have districts like a big legislative target in South Jersey, the 4th district. There are 35,000 people going to get ballots mailed out in just a little more than a week. So when you look at that, and because Donald Trump did us the greatest favor as the Democratic Party, he voted by mail, but then he trashed it. And Republicans actually, in New Jersey, in these districts, de-enrolled because of Donald Trump. It is amazing.
It's true. He told his own voters not to vote, which is a remarkable campaign strategy. And then to say it was stolen by yourself.
Mike Duhame, come January and the swearing in, are Republicans going to control either or both houses of the legislature?
I agree with Mike. I think Republicans have to pull an inside straight. You have to kind of win every single competitive election to happen. That's hard to do. I mean, if the Democrats had run Nick Berzicelli instead of his brother, maybe they would have a better shot there. But I think Republicans have to win all. Mike's right. There are several things going in Republicans' favor. The map is better than it was. It was awful before. It's not great now, but not great is better than awful. So a better map, a 6th year of Governor Murphy, a president who people are indifferent about, and is actually, I think, dragging people down. Democrats have a big financial advantage. That helps out a lot and could prevent that. But for the first time in a long time, the map is such that Republicans say, hey, if everything goes right and the wind blows, we actually could get the majority or maybe a tie.
We got 2 minutes left, and I really just want to touch on something because the past few weeks, especially in this area, the news coverage has largely been, in terms of political issues, about offshore wind, immigration, how schools handle trans kids. So, Mike Mueller, on each of these issues, it seems like the Democrats are on the defensive, so let me ask you, are these issues that I just outlined, are they going to be the dominant issues come November, or are we going to actually be talking about affordability?
Look, we're going to be talking about affordability in a lot of ways, but this is going to be, when you take an issue like offshore wind, I'll use that as it's been talked about a lot here. And this has been, one that it is a district where the Democrats and Republicans are actually, fighting back on it on either side. Some of the other issues you raise, we talk about the migrant population moving, we're all on the same page in these key areas we're talking about. Look, when it comes to parental rights in schools, look, I will say, in some of, I'll at least speak to the South Jersey districts, we have some candidates running who've been very clear that parents and educators need to have a voice in this process in a real way. So I don't think you're going to see us talking in different lanes there. But offshore wind, we will, because let's face it, there's a massive disinformation campaign launched by Jeff Van Drew, the author of Offshore Wind years ago, who proudly talks about his 120-foot windmill he has in his backyard and was the champion of climate change back when he was running around saying that we need to believe
He's
survivors.
A MAGA Democrat.
And
He's
go
a
after
MAGA
Kavanaugh.
Democrat. A MAGA Democrat.
Look, it was I look at all this with those things. He started a big disinformation campaign here, and it's a lot of BS. You got 2% of the vessels out there are actually related to offshore wind. And you know what? The debunking it, that's a big fight. Follow the money. Yeah, it's big oil. Because what's really going to happen, I'm going to finish on this one point, is make no mistake about it. Trump said it in the CNN town hall, drill baby drill, 3 miles off the continental shelf here in the Atlantic County area on that ocean. Jeff Van Drew and his buddies, if you follow the money, they want to put oil rigs out there, and that's why they want to stop offshore wind. That's the truth.
Mike DeHame.
All right, I'll take both. I'll take the energy piece. I think with the wind piece, the issue does come back to affordability, because I think most people, I think it's a broader energy policy issue for Governor Murphy, and it goes back to affordability. Governor Murphy has blocked everything that he could, just about. He's let a few projects go when it comes to natural gas, and what is really keeps the lights on. Now, in New Jersey, in the last 8 years, we've lost one of our nuclear power plants. All of that electric generation has been replaced by natural gas. Not windmills, not solar. So for all of his 2030 goals, it's natural gas that's doing it. So the problem, with all this is the broader policy of where he wants to do this in a way where he kind of pretends this way, and people are worried about the cost more than anything else. Both people want clean air, they want to get rid of coal, and that's the way to do it. Second, on the on parental rights policies, this is where Republicans, I think, need to be careful. They need to tread carefully here. They do not win on social issues. When it comes to trans kids, LGBTQ kids, we should be leaving it to parents and the people who love them the most. I do not like states like where Ron DeSantis is trying to supplement the government's choice on these things, and that's where no governor in a faraway state capital should be trying to dictate what parents do in this. And that's where I think in New Jersey, the teachers union or whoever's in charge of maybe the state needs to do a better job of describing that parents and educators are working together on this, and that message hasn't gotten out.
I'm getting the signal that our time is up. So let me just conclude with this. Like any great discussion, one is always left wanting more. But that is why the Southern New Jersey Development Council is so important, because it continues to provide these forums. So let's give another round of applause for the two mics. And thank you all. I guess I turn it over to Glenn.
So we need a steel cage.
I don't know.
Okay, it's that time. They always put me at the end of the program. I don't know why that is, because you guys don't want to hear from me anymore. You're all ready to go home. I appreciate, look, I was chair for this particular event for a couple of years, and I got to give huge props to Lisa and this committee for actually delivering the governor, so let's thank them for that. That is a feat. I can't remember the last time. I can't ever remember the governor being here, so that's a great get for them. We want to thank you all for coming here. A couple of quick notes. You will receive an email today with photos from today. We've got the Stokes guys. They are everywhere. They did a hell of a job. You're going to get access to all those photos, so keep an eye out for that. You're also going to get a quick survey. We'd love you to take the survey. Help us make this a better event year after year, so please be sure to do that. You'll also see on your table the regional outlook. That is a great 40,000-foot view of what's happening here in South Jersey from coast to coast. So please check it out. Lots of great information about new programs going on. We want to thank Resorts. Resorts, always such a great host. This is a terrific venue, lots of elbow room, great stage. So thank you very much to all our friends at Resorts. So it's almost 12 o'clock. We've got the reception going on in the pool deck. If you decide that you are not going back to work, I won't tell. I just want to make sure you don't tell on each other. So if we can all promise that we're not going to tell on our friends that don't go back to work, you can go and have a great day. Thanks for coming.